Thank you for inviting me to speak today about the connection between corporate culture, specifically civility, on the one hand, and marketing your business on the other. So I know what you are all thinking right now. You are thinking, what the heck does civility have to do with marketing my business? The reason I know that this is what you are thinking right now is because this is what I am thinking right now. But fortunately for all of you, and most primarily for me, I came prepared to answer that question. But I do have two questions for you to consider. What impression do you want others to have of you and your business? And second, how well does your behavior and that of your employees match the impression that you want others to have? Because here's your takeaway message right up front. Your behavior and that of your employees is your core marketing message. You can have a great website that has wonderful mission and vision and values, but all of that fades away depending upon how you treat your employees and how you and your employees treat your customers and clients. More on that in a bit. Our country and countries around the world continue to heal from the after effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. But now another more insidious but equally contagious pandemic is infecting individuals around the world. That's the pandemic of rudeness and incivility. One author in Australia has coined a new fake diagnosis that I imagine him using against friends and family by saying, aha, that is your PCRS acting up. Post-COVID rudeness syndrome. Now, COVID-19 didn't create rudeness and incivility. That's something that's been with us since the beginning of humanity, I'm sure. Its impact on the workplace has been more well documented in the last 20 or so years by the research of Dr. Christine Porath and others. So when we're talking about incivility, what exactly do we mean by this? So I expand on this in my forthcoming book, but suffice it to say, these are behaviors that are seemingly inconsequential, low-level behaviors that still create stress in the person who is the target of the behavior, in people who witness the behavior, and even reflecting back to the person who's exhibiting the behavior. So these are things like rolling your eyes and gasping when someone makes a point in a meeting, posting negative comments in the chat while someone's presenting in Zoom, maybe negative things you write in Slack or in a pointed email, or what are called victimless acts of incivility. Things like leaving the photocopier jammed for someone else to have to deal with, or chronically leaving your dishes in the sink so your coworkers either have to navigate around them or do them for you. I may be speaking from experience, okay? But the stress associated with these behaviors, if poorly managed, can build up in employees and create toxic work cultures, which then lead employees to feel demotivated, disconnected, and therefore to see a decline in their productivity, which lead businesses to diminished profitability. It can ultimately lead to the demise of the business. So let me give you an example. A few years ago, on a Friday night, my partner and I decided to go out to dinner. And we selected a new restaurant that had opened locally to great acclaim. And I will tell you that the food was delicious. But unfortunately, that's only part of the story. So we arrived at the restaurant and were greeted by someone who it turned out to was the owner. She was funny, friendly, she had an infectious laugh and this great sense of humor, and she talked quite animatedly about her excitement about opening this new business. We were thrilled for her, offered her our support. We ordered our meals. I went and grabbed my exciting beverage of a water out of the cooler, and then we headed on out to the patio where we had a seat at the far end to await for our meals to be delivered. So we were in conversation for maybe 90 seconds when I suddenly became aware of a disturbance on the patio coming from the restaurant. Someone was screaming, and I turned to look, and it was the owner who was screaming. And she was pointing. She was moving in my direction. She was yelling at me. I don't know who you think you are, but in my book, if you take things you don't pay for, that is stealing. And I won't stand for it in my business. Let's freeze it there, okay? Now, gang, I'm an executive coach, and I teach people mindfulness. I'm a mindfulness practitioner myself. So in this little scenario, you might all expect that I would respond like Deepak Chopra, right? Or Eckhart Tolle, who report they are unflappable in all situations. God love them, okay? But if I told you that, it wouldn't be a true story, okay? Because if there's something that the friends and family of John will tell you, John has a very long fuse, but once it goes off, look out, okay? Because it's not going to be abusive, and there aren't going to be expletives, but it's going to get real direct, real fast. Because if there's one thing I don't like, it's being falsely accused of something. And the other thing I don't like is someone's attempt to publicly humiliate me. This was a double whammy. Back to our story. I'm sorry. I assumed I had paid for this beverage. It's not my responsibility to supervise your employees. And quite frankly, I don't like the way that you're treating me. Our conversation continued as I followed her into the restaurant, where I paid my $1.50 for the stolen water. Okay? So a friend said to me, well, of course you left, John, right away, right? Let's remember, I'm a frugal New Englander, okay? So I'm going to stay to get my money's worth, which I did. And I ate that meal, and it was delicious. But when we left the restaurant that day, we knew we're never coming back. And all the people that witnessed that on the patio, I'm guessing most of them didn't come back. Because a few months later, that restaurant closed. Why? Because her behavior was her core marketing message. And not her friendly, engaging behavior, but her stress-related, uncivil, negative behavior. Now, many of you are thinking, poor woman, she's got stress-related negative behavior. Too bad for her. Newsflash, we all do. I do. You do. Now, if I went to your employees right now and asked them, what would they tell me are your stress-related negative behaviors? If I went to your customers and asked them about you or your employees, what would I hear? Stress-related negative behaviors can erode business reputation. most especially when it comes from a leader. Leadership matters. Now, I'm not a big believer in trickle-down economics, but I'm not going to argue that point because it's not my expertise. But I am a big believer in trickle-down interpersonal dynamics, and I am going to argue that point and go to the mat arguing that point. So let me warn you up front. I may be small, but I'm scrappy. Okay? In 2022, Christine Porath published an update article on the state of incivility in the workplace. When she first began collecting data in 2022, she found that about 50% of employees indicated experiencing incivility in their workplace at least once in the last month. When she repeated that research in 2022, not surprisingly, that number was 76%. And 70% of individuals reported they had experienced incivility 3 times or more in the last month. But most alarmingly, 25% of participants admitted taking out their frustrations on customers and clients. And gang, I'm absolutely sure that number vastly underestimates the true amount. So, stress-related negative behaviors can erode your business, but it means you have to have an awareness of them and a motivation to change. So where do you get that? Well, let me give you an example of a client I worked with, Testy Ted. Now, that's not his real name, right? Hopefully I don't need to make that clear. But Ted came to me partway through the pandemic seeking out a thought leader who could help him and the thought partner navigate his way through some of the challenges of the pandemic. But Testy Ted also said that he wanted my help in improving his leadership ability. He was a young leader who had taken over this business, was in his 30s. So early in our work together, we were talking about a client case, personnel issue that he was experiencing, and I offered Ted my brilliant insight, okay? And this is how Ted responded to me. That's not it at all, John. Jeez. And he tried to go on. And I said, hold it. Stop right there. And Ted gave me that deer in the headlights look that I get with clients when I know I've potentially hit pay dirt, right? So he had no idea to what I might be referring. And so I said to him, you scoffed, you dismissed me, and you rolled your eyes. And I wonder, does this come up in other places in your life? And then I sat back and I waited the adulation that Ted would be providing, right? Because here I was giving him leadership feedback. This is what he said he wanted. Except having worked with people for over 30 years, I actually wasn't expecting that. And Ted didn't disappoint, okay? Ted got testy. Ted got defensive. And when Ted walked out the door that day, I wondered, would I be seeing Ted again? To his credit, Ted did return. And to his credit, he expressed gratitude for my feedback, albeit difficult to hear in the moment, right? Because he realized he was unaware of this stress-related negative behavior and how it sometimes leaked out, and the angry guy in him would take over. And we went on to do some good work together, helping him to identify when his uncivil behavior was emerging. And interestingly enough, what Ted reported later is when he shared these insights with his wife, he also discovered that this stress-related negative behavior wasn't just manifesting in the workplace, but also in his home space. So he saw improvements there too. So I want to bring you back to the questions we started with today. What impression do you want others to have of you and your business? And how well does your behavior and that of your employees match the impression that you want to give? Except I'm going to add to that now. How well does your behavior and that of your employees under stress match the behavior that you and the impression that you want others to have? Because having an awareness of how stress-related negative behaviors are impacting your work environment is absolutely critical, but it takes awareness and a motivation to change. So in closing, I'm mindful of the old joke. Many of you may have heard, but please laugh anyway. How many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? The answer is just one. But the light bulb has to want to change. Right. So when it comes to incivility and growing your awareness of its impact on your workplace, what kind of light bulb are you going to be?